On January 30, 1933, si Adolf Hitler ay naging Chancellor ng Germany after mamatay ni President Paul von Hindenburg. And as Hitler raised to power, nag-mandate siya ng mga policies discriminating the Jewish people. And dahil sa mga mandated policies na ito, nagkaroon ng mga legal prejudice towards the Jewish people, na kung saan naka-experience sila ng public humiliation and plunder ng kanilang mga properties. At itong persecution na to ay dumating sa isang extremist level, na kung saan itong mga Jewish people ay pinasok sa mga labor camps, na kung saan marami sa kanila ang namatay due to starvation, disease, and inhuman conditions. At hindi lang dito natatapos, na kung saan pinatay ang mga Jewish people through mass shootings and gas chamber operations, na kung saan nag-lead sa tinatawag na Holocaust, na kung saan nagkaroon ng genocide and murder of almost 6 million Jews. At ang lahat ng ito ay nagsimula at nag-ugat sa ideology and worldview ni Adolf Hitler, na naniniwala siya na mga Jewish people ay isang mga Untermensch, or in other words, subhumans. Or in other words, naniniwala si Adolf Hitler na mga Jewish people ay inferior races or inferior group of people compared sa mga Germans. At saan nga ba galing ang ideology na ito or worldview na ito na naniniwala sa mga superiority and inferiority of race? And at that time, itong ideology at worldview na to ay nanggaling sa nag-iisang Friedrich Nietzsche. Si Friedrich Nietzsche ang nagpauso ng statement na God is dead. And sabi niya, dahil wala ng Diyos, wala na tayong standard for our morality. At dito, pinropose ni Friedrich Nietzsche ang kanyang idea of Übermensch, or in other words, Superman. Na dahil wala ng Diyos at dahil patay na ang Diyos, kailangan natin ng isang tao, kailangan natin ng isang Superman na titingalain ng lahat ng tao at doon ibabase ang kanilang morality. And speaking of Adolf Hitler, na-influensyan siya ng philosophy ni Friedrich Nietzsche, and finulfill niya yung prophecy ni Friedrich Nietzsche na kailangan ng mundo ng isang Superman. At dahil sa ganitong ideology and worldview, nagkaroon si Hitler ng kanyang idea na he will be the Superman or the Übermensch of the world. And dahil meron nga tayong superior man, dahil meron tayong superman, ibig sabihin meron tayong inferior people. At nakita niya ang mga Jewish people as the Untermensch. At nakita niya ang kanyang sarili na si Hitler as the Übermensch. In other words, this kind of extreme ideology leads to the mass extermination of humanity. But this is the question: is the Holocaust objectively evil? Isa sa mga bagay na hindi natin kayang i-deny sa buhay ay ang ating concept and witness and experience of evil. Na-experience at na-witness na natin ang mga iba't ibang kind of suffering, injustices, and pain. And dahil meron tayong concept of evil, ibig sabihin nun, meron tayong concept of good. Kasi sabi ni St. Augustine, evil is just the absence or privation of good. Na kung saan nakikita natin tong evil na to kasi absent and privated ang good. So let's say for example, murder is wrong because honoring one's life is good. Nasabi natin that rape is wrong because honoring one's sexuality and dignity is good. At alam natin na theft is wrong because conserving one's property is good. Ibig sabihin nito, alam natin yung concept ng evil at kaya nating i-pinpoint ang evil because we have the concept of good. And evil is just the absence or privation of good. So balik ulit tayo dun sa ating question kanina. Is the Holocaust objectively or subjectively evil? Kapag sinabi nating subjectively evil, ibig sabihin mali yung ginawa ni Adolf Hitler at mali yung nangyari sa Holocaust just because of our emotion, feelings, and personal preferences. And then kapag sinabi natin that the Holocaust is subjectively evil, ibig sabihin nun na hindi natin kayang i-condemn at hindi natin kayang magpatong ng justice kay Adolf Hitler. Bakit? Kasi para sa atin mali yun. At para sa kanya, tama yung ginagawa niya. So it is just based on our personal preferences. Therefore, justice is not in the paradigm. Because if we live in a culture and society that the morality of people is subjective, then we cannot claim justice because it is right for you, then it is wrong for me. And it is true for me or it is right for me but it is wrong for you. Ibig sabihin, lahat tayo is may kanya-kanya tayong concept of right and wrong just based on our feelings, emotions, and personal preferences. Pero kapag sinabi natin that the Holocaust is objectively evil, ibig sabihin, kailangan natin mag-posit ng objective standard of right and wrong. Kailangan natin mag-posit ng standard kung paano natin nasabi na yung Holocaust ay objectively evil. So anong point natin dito? Unang point natin is we have the concept of evil because it is the absence or privation of goodness. And we have the concept of evil and good because we posit now the moral law, an objective moral law para masabi natin na yung isang bagay ay mali at yung isang bagay ay totoo. So in our paradigm of discussion today, we see that from evil, we have the concept of good at kapag pinagsama natin yung ating concept of evil and good, magkakaroon tayo ng positing of moral law. Ngayon, the argument is that moral law is not grounded in numbers, shapes, or culture. In Christianity, moral law is grounded on a person, on a moral lawgiver. Bakit? Because the discussion of morality is raised either by a person or about a person. Kasi hindi naman nag-raise ng question or objection about morality yung mga puno, at yung mga aso, at yung mga pusa. Ang ibig sabihin nito, the subject and discussion of morality is raised either by a person or about a person. Ibig sabihin, the subject and discussion of morality is tied to personhood. Therefore, sa ating paradigm from evil to good to moral law, we have to posit a moral lawgiver. And if in Christianity, the moral law is grounded on a person, grounded on a moral lawgiver, that moral lawgiver is God. So sa ating discussion ngayon, our paradigm becomes from evil to good to moral lawgiver, or God. Ibig sabihin, the objection of the existence of evil does not eradicate the existence of God. At kung iisipin mo philosophically and logically, the question and objection for the existence of evil leads that we need to accept that the moral lawgiver also exists, or that God exist. If we put this discussion in a logical and deductive argument, ito ay tinatawag na moral argument. Premise 1, if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Premise 2, objective moral values and duties do exist. Conclusion, therefore, God exists. I am a Christian because it is reasonable to believe that God exists as the moral lawgiver. Ngayon, ang tanong, if God exists, then bakit siya nag-aalaw ng mga evil and suffering sa mundo? Ngayon, that is a good and legitimate question, pero i-discuss natin yan next time. But in the meantime, naset na yung foundation natin for our discussion, that it is reasonable to believe that God exists as the moral lawgiver. It is reasonable to believe that God exists to explain the reality for the existence of the objective moral values and duties. So again, my challenge for you today is that to think it philosophically and logically, that the objection and question for the existence of evil leads to prove that God exists in the paradigm of reality, from evil to good to moral law giver.